You bought a house with my money, and your wife and mother-in-law are going to live in it? The words left my mouth like fire, burning my tongue with the heat of my anger. My son Marcus stood across from me, his head bowed low, his shoulders hunched like a boy caught stealing from the candy jar. But this wasn't candy. This was my life savings, my future, my sacrifice. And he had taken it without so much as a conversation, without a thought for the woman who raised him. I could feel my chest tightening, the years of hard labor pressing down on me like a weight I couldn't shrug off. The betrayal stung deeper than any cut, because it wasn't a stranger who robbed me. It was my own blood. But maybe I should back up a little, so you understand exactly who I am and why this moment cut so deep. My name is Loretta Johnson, and I am 68 years old, born and raised in Macon, Georgia. I grew up in a little shotgun house with a tin roof that leaked every time it rained. I learned young that if I wanted something, I'd have to work harder than most to get it. And I did. Lord knows I did. I worked as a nurse's aide for more than 40 years. Nights, weekends, holidays. While other folks were home with their families eating turkey on Thanksgiving, I was changing bedpans and holding the hands of patients who didn't have anyone else. When my paycheck wasn't enough to cover the bills, I cleaned houses. I scrubbed floors until my knees ached, polished silver that wasn't mine, dusted picture frames full of happy families I could only dream about. And all the while, I was raising my boy, Marcus, my only child, my pride and joy. His daddy left when he was just 5, leaving me to play both mama and daddy. I swore I'd give Marcus everything I never had. Shoes without holes, hot meals every night, the chance to go to college. I poured every ounce of myself into that boy, believing, hoping, that one day he'd look back and be proud of his mama, that he'd understand the sacrifices. And I thought he did, until today. Because here I was, standing in the middle of a house I didn't even know existed until this morning. A big, beautiful 2-story with white columns out front and a wide porch that looked like something out of a magazine. It should have been a dream come true, but it wasn't my dream. It was theirs. Marcus's wife, Vanessa, and her mama. And all I could think about was the way my hands trembled when I opened my bank account last week and saw the balance. The way my heart dropped when I realized the money I had saved for years, money I planned to use for my retirement, for a little home of my own, was gone. At first, I thought it had to be a mistake. Banks make errors sometimes, don't they? But then I saw the withdrawals, the transfers, the signature that looked like mine but wasn't. Marcus's doing. Now, standing in front of him, I saw no shame in Vanessa's eyes, only annoyance. Her mama sat smugly on a brand new leather sofa like a queen settling into her throne. I wanted to scream, but instead I asked the only question that made sense. You bought a house with my money, and your wife and mother-in-law are going to live in it? Marcus finally looked up at me then, and for a split second, I thought I saw the boy I used to know. The boy who used to bring me dandelions from the yard. The boy who used to hold my hand when we crossed the street. But just as quickly, that boy disappeared, replaced by a man who had made a choice that didn't include me. Mama, listen, he started, his voice low, almost pleading. It's not what you think. But I cut him off. It's exactly what I think. You took my money, my savings, and you used it to buy this place for them. I jabbed my finger toward Vanessa and her mother. Vanessa smirked, her hand resting protectively on the arm of the sofa, like a queen settling into her throne. I wanted to scream, but instead I asked the only question that made sense. You bought a house with my money, and your wife and mother-in-law are going to live in it. Marcus finally looked up at me then, and for a split second, I thought I saw the boy I used to know, the boy who used to bring me dandelions from the yard, the boy who used to hold my hand when we crossed the street. But just as quickly, that boy disappeared, replaced by a man who had made a choice that didn't include me. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone, my hand steady despite the storm inside me. I pressed a number and held the phone to my ear. When the call connected, I put it on speaker. Marcus's face went pale, all the color draining from his cheeks. He knew exactly who I was calling, and in that moment, I knew this wasn't the end of the story. It was only the beginning. Now, before I go deeper into what happened next, let me pause right here and talk directly to you watching and listening. If this story so far has touched you, if you can feel the pain of a mother's betrayal, or it reminds you of something you've been through, please go ahead and like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that bell icon so you don't miss the next part of the journey. And drop a comment below telling me where you're watching from. I'd love to know. All right, now let's get back to it. You bought a house with my money? And your wife and mother-in-law are going to live in it? I repeated, my voice quivering but stronger now, louder, enough to shake the walls. The phone on speaker filled the room with silence on the other end, but Marcus already knew. He knew exactly who I had called, and that knowledge turned his face ghostly white. "Mama, please," he whispered, stepping closer, as if lowering his voice could somehow shrink the size of his crime. His hand reached out, but I pulled back, clutching my phone tighter, like it was a weapon. On the other end of the line, a voice finally spoke. "Mrs. Johnson? This is Attorney Daniels. I assume this call means we're ready to discuss next steps?" Marcus flinched, like the words were daggers. Vanessa's smirk faded, replaced with a nervous twitch at the corner of her lips. Even her mother shifted uncomfortably in her seat, though she tried to mask it with a roll of her eyes. "Yes, Mr. Daniels," I said, my eyes never leaving my son's. "We are ready." Vanessa let out a sharp laugh, brittle and hollow. "What is this, some kind of act? Loretta, you don't need a lawyer. This is family business." I turned to her slowly, every muscle in my body stiff with rage. "Family business?" I said, the words cutting like glass. If it was truly family business, my son wouldn't have gone behind my back, forged my name, and drained my account for a house I was never even told about. Marcus finally broke, his hands raised as if he could push the truth back into silence. "Mama, listen, it was just a mistake. I was going to tell you, I swear. We needed a place to live. Vanessa's mama was getting older and—" I cut him off, my voice cracking but refusing to break. "And what about me? I worked my whole life, Marcus. Every dollar, every penny in that account came from the sweat on my brow and the ache in my bones. I skipped meals so you could eat. I walked to work in the rain because the car needed gas to get you to school. I saved and I planned for the day I could finally rest. And you thought I wouldn't notice when it was gone?" He stared at me, his lips trembling, his eyes darting to his wife for support, but Vanessa offered none. Her face had hardened into stone, cold and unyielding. "You don't understand," he whispered, his words choking. "I understand enough," I said firmly. My chest rose and fell with the weight of years of sacrifice being trampled under the heels of his betrayal. The lawyer's voice carried through the phone again, professional and steady. "Mrs. Johnson, as we discussed, given the forged signature and unauthorized withdrawals, you have grounds for a fraud complaint. If we proceed, the property will be frozen until the matter is resolved. Marcus Johnson could face both civil and criminal consequences." The room erupted. Vanessa jumped to her feet, her high-pitched voice cutting through the air. "You're not serious? Fraud? Criminal charges? That's your own son!" Her mother scoffed loudly, standing as well, her arms folded across her chest. "This is ridiculous. Loretta, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. What kind of mother calls the law on her own flesh and blood?" My knees trembled, not from weakness, but from the battle inside me. For a moment, I saw Marcus as a little boy again, standing in front of me with scraped knees and tear-stained cheeks, begging for forgiveness after breaking the neighbor's window. He used to cling to me then, swear he'd do better, but this wasn't a broken window. This was my life. I looked at him, my heart breaking and hardening at all once. What kind of son steals from his own mother? The silence after my words was deafening. Marcus sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands. Vanessa stormed across the room, her heels striking the floor like hammers. "You can't do this, Loretta. If you ruin Marcus, you ruin yourself too. Who's going to take care of you when you're old and frail?
Who's gonna make sure you don't end up in some nursing home?" The words were venom, but they didn't sting the way she wanted. I had lived long enough to know the truth. She didn't care about me. She cared about the house, the money, the security she thought she had snatched out of my hands. I straightened my back, clutching the phone tighter. If I end up in a nursing home, at least I'll be there knowing I didn't raise a thief. The attorneys cleared his throat. "Mrs. Johnson, I'll draw up the necessary paperwork. Once filed, the property will be under investigation and your funds can be traced. Shall we move forward?" Vanessa's eyes widened in horror. Marcus looked up, his eyes wet, pleading. "Mama, no, please, don't do this. I made a mistake, but you're my son. You're my only son. Don't turn your back on me now." His words cut through me like jagged glass. I wanted to run to him, hold him, tell him I'd fix it all like I did when he was little, but then I remembered the empty bank account, the countless hours spent on my knees scrubbing floors that weren't mine, the years of denying myself so he could have more. I remembered the dreams I had tucked away, waiting for the day I could finally live for myself. And I remembered that he had stolen them from me. "I'm not turning your back on you," I said, my voice trembling but steady. "You turned your back on me the moment you took what wasn't yours." The lawyer's voice was calm, almost gentle. "Mrs. Johnson?" "Yes," I whispered, my eyes never leaving Marcus's. "Move forward." The line clicked as Daniels confirmed the next steps, and I ended the call. The room felt heavy with the weight of what had just been set in motion. Vanessa's face twisted in fury, her hands balled into fists. "You'll regret this," she spat. "You think you're punishing us, but you're destroying your own family. No one will stand by you when this is done." Her mother added, her voice dripping with disdain. "Ungrateful old woman. You should be happy we're even letting you in this house." I turned to them both, my eyes sharp, my voice unwavering. "This house isn't yours. It never was, and soon enough, you'll see just how wrong you are." With that, I turned on my heel and walked out the door, my leg shaky but carrying me forward. The evening air hit my face like a slap, cool and bracing. I took a deep breath, feeling the sting of tears I refused to let fall. Behind me, I could hear Marcus calling out, his voice breaking, "Mama, Mama, please!" But I kept walking. Each step felt like a piece of my heart was breaking, but each step also felt like freedom. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't bending, I wasn't giving in, I wasn't sacrificing myself for someone else's comfort. For the first time, I was standing for me. And though the pain was sharp, I knew deep down it was the only way.
The night after I walked out of that house, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake in my little apartment, staring at the ceiling fan as it turned slow circles, creaking with every rotation. My chest felt heavy, my mind racing through memories I didn't want but couldn't escape. Marcus's face when I told the lawyer to move forward, Vanessa's venomous words, her mother's smug look, as if I were just a nuisance in their lives. I had carried that boy for 9 months, raised him alone, and this was where we ended up. Betrayal on top of betrayal. I thought maybe I'd feel relief after making the call, some small piece of justice, some sense of control. But all I felt was the ache of a wound too deep to bandage. The truth is, no lawyer, no lawsuit, no frozen property could undo what Marcus had done to me. Money can be earned again, houses can be rebuilt, but trust, once broken, that's gone. Still, when the morning came, I rose, made myself a cup of coffee, and sat at my little kitchen table with a notepad and pen. I wasn't going to just sit and cry. I had done enough crying in my life. This time, I would fight. The phone rang later that morning. It was Daniels, my lawyer, his voice steady as ever. "Mrs. Johnson, I filed the motion this morning. The property has been frozen until the case is resolved. Your son cannot sell, refinance, or transfer it. We'll have the bank trace the withdrawals. Once they confirm the forgery, we'll have grounds for restitution." I closed my eyes, gripping the phone tighter. Restitution. A nice word for getting back what was mine. But could anything really restore what I had lost? "Thank you," I whispered. That evening, as I came back from the grocery store, I saw Marcus standing outside my building. Her car was parked crooked, her head bowed as she leaned against it, hands in her pockets like a lost child. For a moment, I froze. Part of me wanted to run to her, to gather her in my arms and tell her everything would be all right. But another part, the part that had been bruised and battered by years of being taken for granted, told me to stand my ground. He looked up as I approached, his eyes red-rimmed, his face drawn. "Mama," he said softly, his voice cracking. I walked past him without a word, unlocking the building's front door. But he followed me inside, his footsteps echoing in the stairwell. "Mama, please," he begged. "Don't do this. Don't let that lawyer tear us apart. I know I messed up, but I can fix it. Just give me a chance." I stopped at the top of the stairs and turned to face him. His eyes looked so much like mine, dark and tired, carrying generations of struggle. And that hurt most of all, seeing myself reflected in the face of someone who could wound me so deeply. "You didn't just mess up, Marcus," I said, my voice low but firm. "You stole from me. You lied to me. You put your wife and her mama above the woman who gave you life. Do you even hear yourself?" He dropped his gaze, shame burning his cheeks. I thought I was doing the right thing. Vanessa said we needed the house, that it was a good investment. She said we'd take care of you, that you wouldn't have to worry anymore. "Take care of me?" I laughed bitterly. "By leaving me with nothing? By moving another woman into a house bought with my sweat and blood while I live here counting pennies? That's not taking care of me. That's burying me alive." His shoulders sagged. "I didn't think it would hurt you this much." I shook my head, disbelief coursing through me. "You didn't think? After everything I've done for you, you didn't think stealing the only security I had left would hurt me?" He reached out, desperate. "Mama, please, drop the case. I'll make it right. I'll work 2 jobs. I'll pay you back. "Stop," I said sharply, holding up my hand. "You had every chance to do right by me before. You chose Vanessa. You chose her mama. You chose yourself. Now I'm choosing me." Tears welled in his eyes, and for a moment I saw the boy he used to be. But I turned away, unlocking my apartment door. "Go home, Marcus," I said quietly. "I don't trust you anymore." I closed the door on him before he could respond. On the other side, I heard him sobbing, begging, until finally his footsteps retreated down the hallway. That night, I cried again. Not because I regretted standing firm, but because I mourned the son I thought I had, the son I thought would never betray me. I realized then that sometimes justice doesn't feel like victory. Sometimes it just feels like survival. Days passed. The investigation moved forward quickly, faster than I expected. The bank confirmed the forged signature, the unauthorized withdrawals. Vanessa's name came up in emails, pushing Marcus to go through with it, insisting it was the only way they'd ever have a house big enough for her mother. When Daniels told me, I felt a strange mix of relief and sorrow. Relief that I hadn't been crazy, that the proof was real. Sorrow that my son had let himself be led down this path, that he'd chosen a woman's greed over his mother's trust. The case made its way through the court system. Vanessa sat in the gallery, glaring at me with eyes full of hate. Her mother whispered in her ear, their heads together like vipers plotting.
Marcus sat with his lawyer, head down, avoiding my gaze. When I took the stand, my hands trembled, but my voice was steady. I told the judge about my life, about the long years of work, the sacrifices, the savings I had guarded like a treasure chest. I told him how I discovered the theft, how I confronted my son, how he said he was just trying to build a life. And then I told him the truth. Your Honor, I am not here because I want to see my son in prison. I'm here because I want him to understand what he has done. He didn't just take money. He took my trust, my future, my dignity. And I won't let anyone, family or not, take that from me again. The courtroom was silent when I finished. The judge looked at me with eyes full of sympathy, then turned his gaze at Marcus. The ruling was clear. Restitution to be paid, the property seized, the forgery marked as fraud. Marcus avoided prison only by the grace of my request for leniency, but he walked out of that courthouse a broken man. Vanessa stormed out before the ruling was even finished, her heels clacking against the marble floor. Her mother followed, muttering curses under her breath. Marcus lingered, his eyes searching for mine. But I didn't look at him. Not then. Not yet. Outside the courthouse, the air felt different, lighter. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. But it wasn't joy. It wasn't victory. It was the hollow relief of knowing the battle was over, even if the war inside me would rage for years to come. That night, I sat on my porch with a cup of tea, listening to the cicadas sing in the trees. I thought about Marcus, about the boy he was and the man he became. I thought about the house, empty now, stripped of its stolen glory. And I thought about myself, 68 years old, tired, but not broken. I realized then that I had a choice. I could let this betrayal define me, or I could rise from it. I could shrink, or I could stand tall. And for once, I chose me.
The moment I hung up the phone, the room turned silent, thick with the weight of what had just been said. My son sat frozen, his face pale, as if all the blood had drained from it. His wife's eyes darted between him and me, her lips trembling, though she tried to mask her fear behind a weak smile. And his mother-in-law? Oh, that woman. Her arrogance flickered for the first time. The smirk she usually wore was gone, replaced by uncertainty. "You didn't just do that," my son finally muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. "Oh, I did," I said, my tone calm but razor sharp. "And you should thank me. That was mercy. If I hadn't warned you first, they would have shown up at the door unannounced. Imagine the shame then, when your precious wife and her mother would be dragged out in front of the neighbors." His wife gasped. "Dragged out? What are you talking about? This is our house." "Our house," I cut her off, rising from the chair with deliberate slowness, making sure each step I took toward her was heavy with meaning. "You mean the house I paid for, with money I worked for, with sacrifices you cannot begin to understand. Don't insult me by calling it yours. You've contributed nothing but entitlement." Her eyes widened, and for a moment she looked like she wanted to argue, but when she met my glare, the words died in her throat. And her mother-in-law? Oh, that woman. Her arrogance flickered for the first time. The smirk she usually wore was gone, replaced by uncertainty. "You think just because you have some money you can control everything? You're jealous, that's what this is. Jealous that he found happiness outside your shadow." I laughed. It wasn't the light-hearted laugh of someone amused. No, it was the bitter, hollow laugh of someone who'd been betrayed one and too many times. Happiness? Is that what you call this?
I pointed around at the lavish furniture, the imported curtains, the shiny new appliances. This isn't happiness. This is theft wrapped in deceit. And if you think I will stand by while you two vultures peck at the bones of everything I built, then you truly don't know me. My son buried his face in his hands. Mom, please, don't do this here, not in front of them. But it was too late. My anger had been caged for too long, and now the bars had snapped. The truth came pouring out, each word sharper than a blade. Do you think I worked double shifts, skipped meals, and wore the same pair of shoes for 3 years straight so you could grow up and hand my hard-earned money to this woman and her spoiled daughter? Do you think I swallowed my pride, begging the bank for loans and hustling to pay them back so you could buy a house and let me rot in a rented room? You owe me. Both of you owe me. And tonight that debt begins to collect. The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator in the corner, the ticking of the wall clock, the uneven breathing of everyone in the room. My words had settled like a storm cloud, and no one dared to move. Finally, my son stood. His hands shook as he reached for me. Mom, please. I didn't mean for it to turn out like this. I swear, I thought I could handle it. The loan was supposed to be small, just enough to get started. Then things got out of control. But I'll fix it. I'll fix everything. I pulled my arm away. You'll fix nothing. Not this time. You've had chance after chance, and every time you chose them over me. No more. The law will fix it now. His wife suddenly dropped to her knees in front of me, clutching at the hem of my dress. Her tears fell fast and hot against my skin. Her mother-in-law rushed forward, wrapping her arm around her daughter protectively. Yes, listen to her. How can you be so heartless? This is your family. Blood should mean something. That word, blood, sent a chill down my spine. I looked at my son, then at the two women, and for the first time, I felt nothing. No pity, no guilt, just a cold emptiness where my love used to live. Family? If family meant something to you, you wouldn't have stolen from me. You wouldn't have lied. You wouldn't have let me struggle while you built a palace with my sweat. Don't you dare talk to me about family. I stepped back, shaking off the daughter-in-law's grip, and my eyes met my son's one last time. You made your choice. Now live with it. The knock at the door came right then, loud and commanding. My son's face crumbled. He knew what it meant. I didn't have to say anything. I simply turned, straightened my shoulders, and walked toward the sound. The moment I opened the door, two men in dark suits stood there, their expressions grim, official. Behind them was a black car idling by the curb. My son stumbled forward, trying to block their path, but I stepped aside. They're inside, I said, my voice steady. Do your job. Chaos erupted. His wife wailed as the men stepped in, papers in hand. Her mother-in-law screamed curses at me, her voice shrill, venomous. My son tried to argue, tried to reason, but the men didn't budge. They handed him the notice, explained the repossession, and within minutes the dream house he had so proudly claimed was no longer his. I watched it all unfold, my heart pounding, but my face expressionless. This was justice. This was consequence. By the time the men left, the house felt like a tomb. My son slumped against the wall, his wife sobbing into his chest. Her mother-in-law glared at me, her eyes burning with hatred. But I met her gaze without flinching. You may hate me now, I said softly, but one day you'll understand. Actions have consequences. Betrayal has a price. And tonight, you've all paid a part of it. I turned and walked out, leaving the door wide open behind me. The cool night air hit my face, and for the first time in years, I felt light. I had taken back my power,
and there was no turning back. As I walked down the street, the sound of their cries echoing faintly behind me, I knew this was only the beginning.
I didn't look back as I walked away, but every step carried the weight of years I had swallowed down in silence. Every sacrifice, every tear, every humiliation I had endured in the name of family. Tonight, I had set it free. The street was quiet, lined with houses that glowed with the warm yellow of lamps through curtained windows. Families sat together inside, laughing, sharing meals, making memories. I once dreamed my home would feel like that. Instead, I had been turned into nothing more than a wallet, a tool for others to use until I broke. But not anymore. For once, I wasn't the one left begging. I wasn't the one cleaning up after everyone's mess. Tonight, they had tasted the bitterness of consequence. And whether they admitted it or not, they knew I was no longer someone they could play. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, half expecting it to be my son, but the screen showed an unfamiliar number. I answered anyway, my voice steady. "Hello? Ma'am, this is Officer Daniels. We just completed the paperwork. The property is secured. If anyone harasses you or attempts retaliation, you call me directly." "Thank you," I said, the words quiet but firm. Hanging up, I tucked the phone away, realizing just how much strength it had taken to get here. As I reached the end of the street, I stopped and turned for one last glance. Through the open doorway of the house, I could see them. My son collapsed on the couch, his wife clutching her stomach, the mother-in-law pacing furiously. The life they thought was secured had shattered in a single night. And the truth? A small part of me still hurt. He was my son, after all. But love without respect is nothing but chains, and I had broken mine. I whispered into the night air, almost like a prayer. "You will learn. One day, you'll understand." Then I walked on, my head held high. The world outside that house was still mine to claim. I still had my future, my dignity, and the fire inside me that no one could take. Betrayal may have broken my trust, but it had also built my strength. And that strength would carry me forward, long after their cries had faded. Sometimes the people closest to us think our sacrifices are endless, but the moment you decide to reclaim your power, you remind them love is not a license to exploit. What would you have done if your own family betrayed you this way? If this story touched you or reminded you of something in your own life, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next story. And let me know down in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? I'd love to hear your thoughts.